They thought she would kneel. She chose to burn.
That's how the old bard begins the tale, by a low fire on the edge of the world where mist curls around the heather like ghost fingers. And this is not just a story, it happened. The empire came with its roads and swords, and Boudica, she came with fire. But let's go back, not to the fire, not yet. Let's start with a silence that came before the storm. The land was quiet, but it was not at peace. Imagine vast fields painted with cold fog, wooden villages nestled in hills, and sacred groves whispering secrets to the wind. This was Iceni land, free land, but freedom, like fog, can vanish when you try to hold it. Boudica was queen, not by birthright alone, but by spirit, tall, with a mane of copper-red hair that seemed to dance in the wind like flames, eyes sharp as a falcon's. People listened when she spoke, not because she shouted, but because her silence was heavy with meaning. Her husband, King Prasutagus, had ruled with care. He played Rome's game, offering tribute, allowing Roman traders, even writing a will that split his kingdom between Rome and his daughters. A clever move, he thought, a safe one. He was wrong. When he died, the Romans didn't honor his will. They tore it up literally. Roman officials arrived, not with sympathy, but soldiers. They seized everything: horses, grain, gold. Roman financiers demanded debts, and when Boudica protested, they laughed. Then they whipped her publicly, and her daughters. They were dragged away, violated. Yes, that happened. Let that settle in. Can you imagine standing before your people, your daughters bleeding behind you, your body striped with Roman lashes, and still being expected to smile? Boudica didn't weep. She didn't scream. Not then. She stood up, quiet, bleeding, and she waited. She waited as Roman soldiers marched back to their forts, waited as whispers spread among the tribes, waited as smoke rose in her heart, slow and steady. And then she spoke.
They broke our bodies, but they will never chain our spirits.
Her words were fire, her voice a drumbeat echoing across hills. The Trinovantes came first, another tribe wronged by Rome, then the Catuvelauni, then more. One by one, old enemies laid down grudges, because suddenly the war wasn't just Boudica's, it was theirs. What happens when a woman has nothing left to lose, but still commands an army? The Romans underestimated her. They always had.
She's just a woman,
they said, but she wasn't just anything. Under Boudica's leadership, a massive army formed, some say 100,000 strong. Farmers, smiths, mothers, hunters, warriors. Not professional soldiers, but people with rage in their veins, the kind of rage that forges iron into spears. They painted their faces blue with woad, sacred war paint. They gathered under oak trees, the old gods watching, and Boudica, mounted on a chariot, spoke.
We are not fighting for riches nor conquest. We fight for freedom, for what was taken.
She didn't beg for loyalty. She earned it. Their first target, Camulodunum, the Roman capital of Britannia, a symbol of occupation, a city built on stolen land. A temple to Emperor Claudius stood in the center, arrogant and gold-plated, paid for by heavy taxes squeezed from starving locals. They came at dawn. Imagine this: the gates splinter, Roman villas burn, marble statues crumble, and the temple, that towering tribute to Roman ego, reduced to ash. The Roman garrison tried to resist, but Boudica's forces swept through like wildfire. No mercy, no survivors. Brutal, yes, but after what was done to her people, mercy was no longer part of the equation. Rome didn't see it coming. Governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus was off on the western coast, suppressing Druids in Mona. He had no idea a rebellion had erupted behind him until it was too late. By the time messengers reached him, Camulodunum was gone, smoke still curled into the sky. And Boudica? She was already marching toward Londinium. The Roman settlers panicked, merchants fled, wealthy citizens begged for protection, but Suetonius made a hard choice. Londinium couldn't be defended. He evacuated the city and left it behind. Boudica entered Londinium like a storm god. The city burned for 2 days. The screams of Roman citizens echoed through the streets. You might think, wasn't this too much? But think of this, every stone of that city had been laid by stealing from the tribes. Every Roman who died had benefited from the silencing of her people. To Boudica and her followers, it wasn't slaughter, it was justice. Still not done, she turned her eyes to Verulamium, another Romanized town, wealthy, arrogant, vulnerable. Her forces razed it to the ground, 3 cities, tens of thousands dead, Rome's grip on Britain shaken to its core. Imagine if you were a Roman governor reading these reports. A woman leading an army that had just dismantled half your province. What would you do? Suetonius gathered what troops he could. Not many, maybe 10,000, but disciplined armored legions. He chose a battlefield carefully. Narrow forest paths, high ground, limited access. Perfect for a Roman formation, not ideal for a massive, uncoordinated rebel army. Boudica's forces arrived, outnumbering the Romans by at least 10 to 1, morale high, spirits wild, behind them families in wagons, watching like it was a celebration. But that was the mistake. This wasn't a feast, this was war. What happens when angry hearts clash with trained, deadly soldiers? At first, the rebels surged forward. The Romans held the line. Then the spears flew, shields locked, formations held, and the chaos began to shift. Boudica's army, brave but poorly trained, began to falter. The wagons behind them trapped their retreat. Roman discipline turned into a meat grinder. Thousands died. The rebellion crushed. Boudica fled the field. Her fate? A mystery. Some say she took poison. Others say she vanished into the forests. Her body was never found. But maybe she wasn't meant to be buried. Maybe she was meant to become legend. Rome wrote its own version of the story, of course. Tacitus claimed Boudica was a savage, a fury, a lesson in rebellion gone wrong. But the people, they remembered differently. She became a symbol, a voice for those silenced, a reminder that power does not forgive, but courage does not forget. You see, Boudica may have lost the war, but she won something bigger. She made the empire bleed. Can a woman's defiance echo louder than an empire's victory? The fire had burned, yes, but embers still glowed. Because rebellions aren't just battles, they're memories, they're contagious. And the story of Boudica, queen of the Iceni, did not end on that battlefield. Let's look deeper. Let's understand how she built something so terrifying to Rome, not with swords alone, but with something more dangerous: belief. Boudica didn't start out to become a legend. She was a mother, a widow, a tribal leader in the far corner of an empire that didn't care if she bled. She had no army, no formal title recognized by Rome, only her pain and her voice. And yet, her defiance echoed through cities, shattered temples, and entire provinces. She led not because she wanted power. She led because she had nothing left to lose, and still people followed. Why? Because she didn't promise conquest. She promised memory. She gave people the right to say, "I was wronged, and I will not stay silent." And that is what terrified Rome, not just her weapons, but the idea that courage could spread like wildfire, that rebellion didn't need to win, to endure. You see, her body was never found. No grave, no shrine. But maybe that's how it was meant to be, because you don't bury something like her, you carry it. We all live through moments where we are silenced, erased, or underestimated. But history doesn't only remember those who win, it remembers those who refuse to kneel. We remember Joan of Arc, burned at the stake but still crowned in memory. We remember Rosa Parks, who changed a country by simply staying in her seat. We remember Malala, who was shot for learning and chose to teach the world instead. These stories weren't built on victory alone. They were built on defiance, on standing up when it was easier to stay silent. Your story doesn't end at defeat. If you rise despite it all, you become someone else's permission to rise too.